Thank you for joining us today on Connect and Collaborate, where we come together every day to introduce you to our network of business and community leaders and discuss important issues that impact business in Colorado and the region. Today, we are connecting with Paul Bergman from the U.S. Export Assistance Center, Denver Export Assistance Center, U.S. Commercial Service.
There we go. You
I'm
got
sorry.
No, it's the whole thing. It's very long. U.S. Department of Commerce, International Trade Administration, U.S. Foreign Commercial Service, Denver Export Assistance Center, and I'm here to help you.
Yeah.
So it's a long name, but glad to be back.
And
Good
your
to see you.
fold-out business card with all that on it.
That's right.
Yeah.
So let's get right to it, Tammy. We have a very full schedule today. It's nice being back. And today we have Dr. Luka Powanga. And Dr. Luka is a professor at the University of Regis. And 10th year, I believe, Dr. Powanga, the program that you're going to tell us about today?
Yes, this is going to be the 10th anniversary, so it's very special to us.
Very good. And you started it, correct?
Yes, I did.
With the University of Regis and the Colorado School of Mines.
Yes, we started it, actually, initially we were in Las Vegas.
Oh, Las Vegas.
Yeah, that's
that
where
right?
we started off. And then we decided we should move it back to Denver. And of course, the reason being that Denver has got one of the most forward-looking energy policies, and Africa's got a lot to learn from it.
And I'm just going to mention, you haven't said the name yet, we're talking about the Energy Africa 10th Annual Conference.
Right.
Absolutely.
And where's it going to be held at this year?
This year it's going to be held at the Holiday Inn. For the past few years, we've been holding it at the Colorado School of Mines. But since the facility that we hold it in is going to undergo some innovations, so that's the reason why we moved it to the Holiday Inn.
And that's the one in Colorado Boulevard. Is that correct?
That's the one off Colorado Boulevard and Cherry Creek Road, I believe.
Right over there. And
That's
if somebody
455.
wanted more information on this, what is the website or your email?
They can either contact me at lpowanga@regis.edu and LPOWANGA, or they can just Google it, Energy Africa. They should be able to get to it. Or they can go to the website, energyafricaconference.com.
All right. And I'm always amazed the speakers that you bring in, major names in the world, especially in Africa and energy. Who's some of the headliners that are coming in this year?
Well, this year we are very excited about the program. We have somebody coming from we have somebody coming from Ethiopian Public Utilities. We have another person who's coming from the Zambia Consolidated Copper Mines Investment Holdings. This is one of the largest companies in Africa in terms of assets. And they are going to talk about some of the things that they are experiencing in terms of microgrids and in terms of investment. So those are just some of the heavy hitters that we're expecting from Africa. Apart from that, we also have national governments that are coming in, and also some from the Department of, some from the U.S. government agencies.
Right. What are some of the panel topics that if people attended, what could they be looking at attending to learn?
When you get to the Energy Africa conference, first of all, we explore the overall picture of what's happening in Africa in terms of energy. And then we decompose those issues and try to provide solutions. So you're going to look at the overall picture, then we'll look at the solutions, and those solutions range from financing, policies, project development and management, all the way to just the actual implementation of those projects.
Very good. Now, you said this is the 10th year, so it takes time. Have you seen any projects, any successes from your program with companies here in Colorado or the United States going into Africa?
Absolutely. In fact, this is one of the reasons why the conference was established. The idea is not to make it just like another conference where you go, you talk about things, a year later, you're still talking about the same things. Our main aim is create partnerships. From the ideas that are being developed at the conference, try and translate those into solutions on the ground, because that is what makes a difference for the people on the ground in Africa. Not the actual talking, but the talking and doing. And so what our main aim has been create these partnerships, provide some kind of information that will enable partnerships to be formed, projects to be identified in Africa, and connect the right people to get those projects actualized. So what we've seen is we've seen a lot of partnerships that have developed over time. For instance, there is a project in Zambia which deals with rural growth communities. The Rural Electrification Agency there did identify about 1,000 rural electrification rural growth communities, and we took up 10 of those with different partners to try and help them. This is just a rural area where there is a good cluster of people. Now what you do is you go in there and provide them with electricity, so that the businesses that they are running now turn into a mini industry, if you will. But you help them with establishing the industry, help them with establishing customers. But you have to invest upfront because they don't have the money to invest themselves. And what you do is we're now creating pretty much a small sector where these people who were not, let's say you're talking about farmers here, they were not producing throughout the year. Now with the help of solar, they are able to drive their pumps and able to produce, to irrigate their products and produce throughout the year. And with the increase in production, now they have got a little bit more money. Now they would even want to spend that money. And by spending the money, now they are able to go to restaurants, they are able to create banks and so on. So now you end up with a situation where that rural community is actually thriving, and that's where we're going.
That's what we really want to accomplish, taking it all the way down there. So very good. Can you give us the website again one more time and your email?
The email is lpowanga@regis.edu, and the website is http://energyafricaconference.com.
And it starts when?
It starts November 9 to 10, and that's at 8 o'clock, and ends at 4:30 on November 10.
Very good, Dr. Powanga. We really appreciate you coming in and telling us about it, and I will be there because I believe I'm on a panel, correct?
Oh, yes, and we are looking forward to hearing what you
really
have
got
to
desperate
say.
this year. We're going to be back, but looking forward to it. So
That's
thank
great.
you very much.
Stay with us. We'll be back with more here on Connect and Collaborate.
Are you guys all clear?
Thanks so much for staying with us today here on Connect and Collaborate. And today we're connecting with Paul Bergman. We're so glad to have you back, Paul. It's been a while since we've had you here.
That's right. So we miss coming here. Steve, he's on guard duty.
Oh,
so
yeah,
he's
that's
down in
right.
Colorado Springs. So we appreciate his service, making sure we're able to sleep at night. He's working 24/7 down there to keep us safe. But we've missed being here, and hopefully we can come back again soon.
Of course, of course. You want to tell us about your next guest?
Our next guest is a friend of mine. Our official title is Chief Advocacy and Outreach Officer, Inta Morris, for the Colorado Department of Higher Education. But Inta and I go back through a mutual friend that I had in Romania. And he introduced us when Inta came to Denver and was working for the Colorado
For the Canadian Consulate.
Is
in
that right?
Colorado, and I was right upstairs. And so since that, we've followed each other's career and become good friends, and actually our work coincides together, working with each other.
Exactly.
And so now what brought us together about 11 years ago was Study Colorado. We put this group together of the higher education schools, university colleges, and community colleges to work together to attract international visitors. And it really took off when Inta took charge of it and made it a very good organization that a lot of other states look at as a model for how to attract international students. So Inta, thank you very much for joining us.
And thank
this
you,
morning.
Paul. Nice to be here.
My pleasure. So have you been working about 10 years on it, 11 years?
Not quite so long. Actually, just coincidentally, we are just issuing our 5-year report, which is from the official launch date. But we did start talking about it, I'm going to say probably about 7 years ago.
Right.
And before I started with it, those conversations were already going on. So you're absolutely right that I think it's been probably about 10 or more years in the making.
They used to call themselves the Gang of Five. It was University of Boulder, University of Colorado at Denver, Colorado State,
University of
Colorado
Denver,
Denver and
Mines.
Those were the
Wow.
five
Yeah.
that were really into the recruiting of international students. And so then we put them together and said, all let's work together, and then branched out to the state, the rest of the state, and community colleges. So it's pretty much a statewide effort on that.
It is a statewide effort. In fact, we have all of the state's public institutions, and we also have a good number of the private institutions that work internationally. And then we also have some English language schools that are teaching the students English when they come over here before they get into an actual university.
Right. About how many schools together? How many members today?
Well, we have 23 members, but one of those members is the community college system. So if you take those individually, we actually have, what would that be, 35 members.
35, very good. And you said you had some new statistics out on your 5-year plan?
Well, I have to say I'm not allowed to say the exact numbers because every year in November we have something called International Education Week. It is nationally proclaimed as International Education Week, and here in Colorado we do the same thing. And then that is the week where we release the official statistics. Every state releases their numbers on that day. It's called the Open Doors Report that's done by the Institute of International Education. But I can tell you that over the years that Study Colorado has been working, every year we have been thrilled to announce an increase in international students because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get more students here as well as send more of our students abroad. So the week after next, the week of November 13th, there will be the official release of the actual number of international students. But again, as I said, we are pretty confident. I think we will be able to say that we continue to see the numbers go up.
Very good. And the number one school is University of Colorado Boulder?
Yes, it is. Yep.
And last year, the Department of Commerce recognized their efforts with the E-Award. And the E-Award, Tammy, is
That's
something
right.
that the U.S. Department of Commerce, and in fact, we had Larry Bell on the program afterwards to recognize their efforts for increasing international trade through international students coming in here. About how much, I don't remember the numbers and not put you on the spot, about how much does international students spend?
Well, when they look at the numbers, this again is done nationally, and it takes into account tuition and housing and all the costs that they think a student is going to spend. So students in Colorado, again, we're going to have, I'll use last year's numbers, over 11,000 international students, and that contributed over $300 million to our economy in 1 year. So that's a pretty good number.
Yeah.
Well
Wow.
over 300.
And people don't realize that. And it's not just that initial hit. I've been here long enough that I've seen that they're here, they graduate, they come back for vacation. As they get into businesses, they contact their schoolmates, they start a relationship going back and forth. And so it's a long-term project developing international trade partnerships and relationships.
And that's really what we try to say too, because I think too many people look at international students as, or students generally, as those, partiers who are out on weekends. But what we like to remind business community is that these are your future business partners. These are the folks who in a couple years are going to graduate, go back home, and now you have self-made partners in other countries all around the world.
Yeah, the connections.
Right,
Definitely.
And each school has something different. There for a while, Colorado State University had the Libyans. And that our relationship's been up and down. But when it's good, there's a number of students over there. Then you have Boulder with Saudi Arabia back in the 80s and 90s. A lot of contacts there. University of Colorado at Denver, Mongolia. And they say that, I'm not sure if this is correct today, because I talked to somebody, I'm not 100%, but it used to say that there are more Mongolians in the greater Rocky Mountain area in Denver anywhere else in the world.
Is that
here. From the school, all started with UCD.
wow?
Well, and what happens is there are a lot of these situations where a school has this unusually large number of a particular country
Population,
represented, and that is actually proof of what we like to say is that our best ambassadors for Colorado are the students themselves. So a student comes here, they're going to go home, they're going to tell their brother, they're going to tell their uncle, they're going to tell their cousins, and pretty soon that's where others are coming.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. If you've got a represented population in each school, is that why, or is it because each school, goes to attract from those countries?
It's all of the above. I think nationally and in Colorado, China is overwhelmingly the country from where most students come from. Almost a third of our international students are Chinese. But then there are particular relationships between schools, and I'll just give you a few more examples that you might not think of. Fort Lewis College down in Durango, they have always had a good relationship with Japan, so it's not a large enough number of Japanese, but it's large for them.
For their proportion.
Exactly. As I said, China's the number one. We also continue, Paul, what you referred to, we continue to get students from Saudi Arabia. That's because their government sponsors a lot of them. We have a lot of students from India. So that's all statewide. And then it's just individual institutions will have partnerships or faculty relationships or some other sort of relationship with particular countries.
Yeah, we can't leave out the world-famous Colorado School of Mines.
Right.
World famous, indeed.
Whenever we do a mission, especially into a third world country or Africa, we always check with their alumni office because they have probably somebody there in the oil or gas or mineral industry, maybe not the top position, but in that second or third level, the graduate of Colorado School of Mines.
Is that right? Yeah. World famous is not an exaggeration when it comes to
Not at all,
those engineering areas, right?
And in fact, Colorado is known generally for engineering and environmental related research, and mine certainly leads the pack in that.
Yeah. My one, like not Fort Lewis, but Lamar, used to go every other year over to Taiwan and bring a couple of students coming back. I always wanted to know what they thought as they got off at DIA and then headed south.
And then headed away, exactly.
They're like, where's those mountains that they were telling me about?
We get them here, and that makes a difference for those schools. That adds people in the seats.
Well, and I imagine it certainly, as you mentioned earlier, contributes to the relationships in future business.
And we also like to say, it's for our own students too. I mean, I think all of our students, Colorado students, have to work in an international environment these days, and not that many of them are going to have the opportunity to study abroad, but having exposure to other cultures and other countries while they're at college, I think that's, it's a fantastic opportunity.
Yeah, and often sometimes that first exposure to other cultures and the foreign students.
And when I teach international marketing, I always really enjoy having international students in the class because they add so much more.
They really do.
I play off of them, and it shows the American students what someone else is thinking.
Right.
Different things. And I love to talk to the Arab students about marriage, especially for the American girls, how it is arranged.
Yep, all of those differences. The week after next, I talked about International Education Week. We are during that week hosting a roundtable discussion, and actually CU Denver is going to host it for us, but we're bringing together some international students from a number of different institutions, including Western State, University of Colorado, Colorado Springs. So we're getting some students together from different parts of the state to have a discussion like that with us and just talk about what it's like to be here, some of the challenges, some of what they see as the opportunities. So that should be a fun conversation then as well.
And what do we have here in Denver this weekend?
This weekend we have what's called the NAFSA Tri-Regional. So NAFSA is a national organization. It's the largest organization of international educators. And they have an annual conference, but then that happens always over Memorial Day weekend. But then interspersed throughout the year, the regions get together. So NAFSA is meeting here in Denver starting over the weekend and then Monday, Tuesday of next week. And that brings together a lot of international educators from our region, and our region is 17.
Three regions, 17 states.
Wow!
And I get to speak to them at 10 o'clock Sunday morning.
Good luck to you, Paul, on that one. I don't know if I'll be there to listen.
I guess you won't be there with me.
Let's see how many of them are excited at 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning, right? Thank you so much. Inta Morris, she's with the Colorado Department of Higher Education and Study Colorado. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
And Paul Bergman, Director of the U.S. Commercial Service Denver Export Assistance Center. We will be back with more here on Connect and Collaborate. Stay with us. We are so glad you're listening today here on Connect and Collaborate, the voice of the Colorado Business Roundtable. We're connecting today with Paul Bergman, the Director of the U.S. Commercial Service Denver Export Assistance Center. And a little segment or theme for the show we like to call The World Comes to Colorado.
That's right, Pat.
I'm
Tammy. All right.
We'll talk to Pat shortly.
That's right, yeah. But, international. So we went from Africa to education, international, and now we're going to tourism. And we have Pat Lee. She is an excellent spokesperson for international tourism for the state in her background and many years in it. And she happens to be in a hardship post in Maui.
Oh,
Pat, are you there?
Yes. Hi.
Welcome, Pat. Hopefully you got up before noon there. Is that correct?
Oh, I did, and it's beautiful. But it's as gorgeous as Colorado. Colorado's number one.
Yeah, well, thank you. Pat, how long you been involved in international tourism from start with your aviation days?
Oh my gosh, I was with Aspen Airways, and which became a United Express carrier. I was there for 18 years, and then I was with Continental Airlines over Denver for 9 years, and then I started my own business as Pat Lee and Associates, and I've represented Cherry Creek Shopping Center and Red Rock and Telluride Airport, and shopping across the United States, like 200 shopping centers. So we really have been very active in bringing tourism into the United States, into Colorado, and of course into Denver.
Well, you've done a great job and great representative of Colorado, and you're in the Hall of Fame. Is that correct, Pat?
Yes, with Visit Denver, I was put into the Hall of Fame in 2007. And I've been fortunate to win the Colorado Tourism Person of the Year under Governor Romer and under Governor Owens. So I feel pretty proud about that.
Any awards you haven't received yet? Just kidding, Pat.
Oh, well.
No, that's great.
Well, I said, you know what, but the biggest award in the world is when somebody came to me at the Colorado Tourism Conference and said, geez, Pat, you've really taught us a lot over the last 50 years, and I appreciate it so much, and I really, really do want to give you something. And she gave me a necklace that was made in turquoise. To me, that meant more than anything I could have ever gotten. That's just a real honor to me.
Well, many people feel that way, and I do too. You've helped me in learning about the international visitors, and especially in the tourism. I know Tammy, her eyes went up when you talked about Cherry Creek Shopping Center. And tell us a little bit how you work with them and attracting international visitors, especially the Mexican visitors.
Well, the Cherry Creek Shopping Center, as you all know, opened up about 20 years ago. And what they really did try to do, actually it was 25 years ago, about 10 years ago, they made the decision of really going after the tourists that come into Denver. And that could be a convention person, it could be an individual FIT. And then we found that there was a huge international market coming in the United States. And if they're coming into Denver and into the national parks, what we do is try to encourage them to come to the number one attraction in Denver, which is Cherry Creek Shopping Center, because everyone wants to shop. And because of the value of the dollar, they can buy so many more things in the United States and in Denver than they can in their own home country. Mexico was one of our number one markets. They would come in to ski in the wintertime. Then they started to buy homes up in Vail, and there's about 250 homes that are owned by people from Mexico. And what do they want to do? They want to shop. And they come to Denver. They want a luxury shopping center. We have 170 stores and restaurants, and we give them what we call our passport to shopping to all of our tourists. And it's a special passport book that they can go to over 60 stores and restaurants and get special discounts. So that's how we encourage it. We're very strong with the German market, the UK market. China and Japan are coming forward now. And a new market for us is Australia. So we're pretty excited about that.
Yeah, we just I saw you just a few days ago at the State of Colorado Tourism out in Grand Junction, and that was a surprising number about Australia. The number of Australian visitors coming here is up. And the interesting figure was that although we may not have as many international visitors, but they're coming and staying longer and spending more money.
That's exactly right. I'll tell you this, that on average, like a local person, we're all so busy when we're in our own home city that we really don't have the luxury to go and shop for 3 or 4 hours. But a tourist does. You always find time when you're out in another city or another country to go shopping. And so we have found that the local will spend around $135 every time they visit a shopping center, where a tourist, depending if it's Mexico or the UK, may spend $2,000, where the Asians may spend $6,000 or $7,000 because they're looking for jewelry and watches and scarves and the very high-end luxury. So our tourists that is coming in from international are very, very important to the entire city.
And from the Department of Commerce statistics about the international visitor, the number one thing that international visitors like to do is shop, even our business
That's
people.
right.
And we've gone now that we make time at least half a day for our business, our government people go to the shopping centers or the malls. It's very
Is that-
important to them, Tammy. Shopping.
Really?
And-
So it
Well,
supports
it
the
was
American
really-
consumerism.
Yes, Pat?
Well, what's very interesting is that this last weekend, you may have seen a lot of people in downtown Denver because the cardiology conference was going on. There were about 10,000 people from around the world. What we saw at the shopping center was about 10% of all those people that were coming in. It was crowded, very crowded this weekend. Most of them were from Europe, Sweden, Switzerland, Germany, UK, and it was mostly men who came in to buy the Christmas gifts for their wives. It was amazing. We had a lot of people that came in to shop, and that's when they have time to do it. Is when they're on a conference, they had an afternoon off, and what they did is they made the decision come shopping. So we love it.
So it's a real team effort from the state to the cities to the shopping centers, the transportation companies. We all work together trying to help that international visitor around the city to do business and to shop. About how
And
many?
we also work with the entire state and all the attractions and the skiers and the hiking and biking, because if we do that, they're going to come in and stay longer in the state of Colorado. And you're right, Visit Denver has been extremely important to us, which is the Convention Visitors Bureau, the state of Colorado. We have gone from number 38 to number 8 with the staffing and finally getting funding. It's very, very important with the economy.
And what's coming here in May, Pat?
Well, what's coming next May is what we call International Powwow. That is the largest international trade show that's held in the United States. We'll have about 6,500 people here in Denver. The last time it was hosted in Denver was in 1991. They estimate close to about $3 billion that will be that Denver and Colorado will expect to bring in the next few years just because of that conference.
And you said $3 billion with a B, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the most important thing to know about that show is the fact that the 3,500 of the people that are coming are media and tour operators or wholesalers from all over the world. And what they're doing is trying to look at the next few cities and states that they're going to be selling their customers to. And what we're seeing is that Colorado is now becoming one of the close to tier 1, because we've now moved up to number 8 within the top 10 cities in the United States to visit.
And I think what we're seeing is a lot of the international visitors have already seen both coasts, and they want to get away from there and come out to Colorado and see the mountains in the spring and summer and winter and fall. So we're seeing a year-round international visitors here. About how many international visitors do you estimate go through Cherry Creek each year?
Well, I kind of break it down. We have right now 18 million visitors that come throughout. That's everybody coming to Cherry Creek Shopping Center. Of the 18 million, 40% are tourists, which represents about 8 million. And of that, 51% are international. So we're seeing close to about 2.5 million people coming through from the international market.
And that's great that they all come there, and you've really done a good job. So we have to wrap up here. Pat, remember us when you go down to the beach here. It's a nice day today, but not as nice in Maui.
Stick your toes in the sand for me.
Thank you, Pat.
I will do it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pat Lee. She's with International Tourism in Colorado and the Cherry Creek Shopping Center. We will be back with more here on Connect and Collaborate. Stay with us. We are so glad you're listening today on Connect and Collaborate. And today we're connecting with Paul Bergman. He's the director of the U.S. Commercial Service Denver Export Assistance Center. And Paul, you have just incredible relationships with so many people in trade, in tourism, in just world travelers in general.
Yeah, I've been very blessed to have this job, be finishing 44 years and in December. And the people that I meet, like our guests we've had with Dr. Powanga and Pat Lee and Inta has kindly stayed on for our last segment here to talk about some of the trips and things like that. But very fortunate, and I get paid for doing this. And I go from education to oil to Africa to tourism.
You couldn't possibly get bored.
Aerospace. Yeah, oh, no. Ball Aerospace, Celestial Seasoning, Coors, and that. So it's a very fascinating career job that I've had for the U.S. government. And so I've been very blessed on that. So Inta has kindly stayed on with us. So we were talking off air, and can you tell us a little about some of the trips that we've taken? And again, a big reason we wanted you to stay because you have the time, but how important international education is to the state. Now, it's not the $3 billion that we're going to see from the tourism coming in. That's a big shot, but this is long term.
And if you add it up, I think maybe not $3 billion, but we get up there in the hundreds of millions. But thanks, Paul. Yeah, we have what we like to say. So Study Colorado, what I run, is an initiative of the Department of Higher Education, started by the governor. And what we do is we work with all of the institutions of higher education in the state, all the ones that really work internationally. And so having a state connection gives them an advantage, and it is a good benefit for them. And one of the things that they get out of it is that periodically when our airport or our mayor or our governor travels somewhere, then we work together closely with them and say we want to put together a higher ed delegation to accompany this business mission or the tourism mission. And so we have done a number of trips in that way. We I don't know if folks remember, about 4 years ago we had a new connection with Tokyo. We now have a direct flight on United Airlines. And the inaugural flight, we went along on that. There were about 7 colleges, universities represented, and I went along. And with higher education going as part of this larger group with business and our elected officials, we really get a lot more visibility. And so it's not just a university going and saying to students in another country, hey, you should think about Colorado. We're going with a much larger group, much larger bang for the buck, and we really get the visibility. This is what Colorado is about, and I think it really is a benefit for our members.
Just a point on that trip to Japan, I'm the historian. It took us 25 years to get that flight. And when we started more than 25 years ago, when they announced it, there were 3 people there that were there 25 years ago. It was Tom Clark,
right?
Dick Clark, and
the Clark
myself,
brothers,
and myself. And this weekend I was very fortunate to attend dinner at the Japanese consulate house here, and I believe the foreign minister of Japan honored Tom Clark for his efforts and initiatives in trying to make Colorado and Japan better partners in trade and everything. Very nice honor. And that's really our second one. Tom Clark received something similar, but from the emperor himself. So Colorado has some very good ties.
Yes.
And it took us a while, but that's a good flight. And it's really helped out.
We've seen a lot come out of that too. I just want to mention it's not just a one-time thing. Since that flight and since our visit there and the relationships that we established, just today I was talking to someone. We had a group from a new university in Japan just starting up, and they came to Colorado, one of 2 states, and they said, we want to partner with you. We want to send some of our students to Colorado. We want to find some partners here. And that's just one of many follow-ups that we've had from that trip 4 years ago.
Yeah, and 4 years, people say, well, that's a long time. Not in international. Nothing happens overnight.
I'm sure.
It takes a long time, yep.
Long time. What's another trip? Mexico?
We went to Mexico with the governor, yes, a couple years ago. Again, it was a trade delegation going down there, and Mexico is really a pretty high priority for us in higher education. It's an obvious priority. It's our neighbor, and we don't really have that many students from Mexico. So we went along on the trip, and while we were there, the business folks who went are doing their business meetings, and the governor's doing his high-level meetings, and we went around and met with a lot of other university folks, high schools. We met with the Ministry of Education, and all of those meetings served to elevate Colorado in their minds as a partner. And so that's what we're doing when we're going abroad. We're getting the visibility by going with the governor, but we're making our own relationships and elevating Colorado in their minds.
And that's very important. It's a first step.
It is, absolutely.
It's a journey of 1,000 miles, but it begins with the first step. Any other places that you've gone?
We did. We went to, just last year, about a year ago, to the United Arab Emirates. And that's a really important region. That's a hub for the Middle East. And that trip actually was part of a initiative and effort by our airport to get a direct flight to that part of the world. So it's all about direct flights, and that's true for us, our students, and our families as well. We want to support the airport in their efforts. And so last year when the mayor and Denver International Airport went there to continue those discussions, we went along and met a lot of alumni, met a lot of university partners, and like I said, students and others.
Yeah, I worked with the airport, and I didn't know it, but once they started talking about that, I turned the airport over to a lot of companies that were doing business that said, yes, we would love to fly Denver to the Middle East nonstop.
It would be nice. I can tell you after having flown not nonstop.
Right. That's
I bet.
a long way over there. What do you see coming in the future for Study Colorado?
Well, I do have to put in a little plug for one more direct flight that's coming up
Okay.
here very shortly, which is Panama, and that's on Copa Airlines. That's we're hoping that will make it easier for all of our folks from here and students from there to travel back and forth, and not to Panama necessarily, Panama included, but really as a step to all of Southern and Latin America. So Panama, we're very excited about that. The inaugural flight is in December. But going forward, we are really looking, we want to work better. We want to utilize our alumni. We have alumni from Colorado all over the world. And I know that the individual colleges and universities, you probably get calls from your college and university asking for money, and that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about trying to reach out to those alumni all over the world and using them as ambassadors for Colorado and promoting our relationships. Because, again, those are built-in partners around the world that are out there and just waiting to be called
and have firsthand experience.
Exactly.
That's
and they most
fantastic.
of them, I think, hopefully most of them, all of them loved it here.
Oh, that's great.
And go back to Panama, I think we were at the same breakfast when we heard the president of Copa talk about the direct flight,
Right.
and which I hadn't thought of. But he says, when you have those direct flights, people in that country are more interested and feel better putting their son or daughter on that flight, and it goes directly to that city, so they don't
Absolutely.
have to transfer.
Absolutely.
And that is, and Panama is definitely a gateway for a lot of the Central American countries. And I just got word last night, hope I'm not blowing it for Laura, but the U.S. ambassador will be coming up for that flight December 9th, I believe. And we'll have some events for them up there. So that's pretty big. We had that for the Japan flight when the U.S. ambassador from Japan came over. And now we have the U.S. ambassador from Panama coming up here. So it shows the amount of interest from the U.S. government side on what these direct flights are and how important they are for trade and relationships.
Yeah, they're a big deal for Denver, and I know that our airport has gone after a number, gotten a lot of them and still going after a lot more, but it really puts Denver on the map and Colorado on the map.
Yeah, and then in the spring we have a direct flight to Paris and one coming up to Zurich.
Yep.
Wow.
So another.
And are you going to be on those, Paul?
I would like to be. I'll be in spirit. It all depends on budget. Who knows what happens on the budget side, but they make a lot of difference. And just going back and forth with our people in Switzerland today, they're excited about it because they see that flight as an economic tool for Swiss companies coming into this market here. And we have some Swiss. We'd like to have some more investment.
Oh, wonderful. Appreciate you being able to like share all those connections with us and just how international a city Denver is becoming.
Yeah, people don't realize that, but once you get into it, I always say it's like a small fraternity, sorority. Once you get into it, you're in it forever. But there's a lot of connections. And I know a few companies, and there's a lot more out there that are exporting from, Ball Aerospace and Satellites to Celestial Seedings, all kinds of companies, to education. And so hopefully today to show the importance of education, what it means to Colorado. You heard the numbers on the tourism, what that means.
Well, and all those international flights are a big boon to that export and trade. It makes, I'm sure, the business travel, the connections that much easier. And I think we think of, having this international airport, but I think most of us don't realize how much it takes to get an actual international nonstop flight.
Ask Laura Jackson. We'll have to have her back.
Yes, we
But
will.
she'll-
Many years go into that.
many years and probably a lot of negotiation and who knows what else, right? Thank you so much, Inta Morris, for joining us today. She's with the Colorado Department of Higher Education and works with Study Colorado. And thank you, Paul Bergman, for bringing us so many wonderful guests today.
My pleasure. Good to see you again, Tammy. Thank you.
Thank you so much for staying with us.